Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Day 9 Daily number 373, where we learn to be a better gamer. It's time to do part 2 of Day 9 Daily number 373. Good. Wanted you to know that twice. We're looking at 3-gate Robo openings in PvP. We started with a very simple example in the first game. We paused to make sure everything was clearly explained, but for the most part it is make sure you're secure from any attack early on, so that way you can get the 3-gate and Robo up. And in the last game we saw that the thing afterwards was very fast, 1 Colossus and a Warp Prism drop. Dropping at the back and Colossus pushing at the front. Let's watch something completely different. So we're going to slip into this game between Liquid Tyler and EG's Huck. This is from MLG Orlando, from the pool play. This game just turned me right on. Unbelievable. Delicious, sweet ice water. Oh yeah. Huck now going to go ahead and throw down his first pylon. He's going to begin chrono boosting probes. Remember, don't over-obsess about these super opening details. Save the exception of how the hell do we stay alive early on. Interestingly, Huck, I think, has one of the weakest stay alive early on decisions that we'll see. We're going to examine that more in the next 2 games that we watch, but in this one, let's just not be that concerned with it. Basically what Huck does is he pokes in, he actually throws down a man or pylon, he sees that there's, looks like at least a somewhat small chance of a 4-gate coming right down the pipeline. So let's actually come to the Huck cam. Huck gets out a single Stalker and a single Zealot before getting his Robo and 3 gates. Notice this gateway is not doing anything. And we're going to see Huck get up the Sentry. This Sentry is going to finish before the 6-minute mark. So this Sentry will be able to deal with a first warp-in of a 4-gate. What this build order cannot deal with is a whole bunch of Zealots and Stalkers attacking you before warp gates are done. So that's the big thing to say. Yeah, so either way, Huck is pushing forward with these few units, but again, note that he's basically going to go into defense mode really, really fast here. Getting himself his warp gates up. Now, how will Huck open this up, right? The question is, how do our variations work? Huck's going to pull back with his 1 Zealot. He now has his Sentry done, so once the Sentry's done, he's pretty much 4-gate proof. And he sees that these Stalkers are up. So he is going to immediately get himself an Immortal. Like, ultra immediately. It's not that bad to be ultra bold and get an Observer up right away. You can just say to yourself, well, my Sentry will be able to block off everything, and then I can chrono boost out an Immortal if I need be. Notice Huck has some nice timing here.
Research complete.
1 probe now going out. This is something I don't want you to overly obsess about yet. Huck's going to be building a lot of pylons around the ring of the map. Absolutely brilliant. Will be the future of this matchup, but I don't want you to focus on that just yet. Let's just focus on the 3-gate Roboing. Now, Huck is doing something very different from what Elfie did. What we're going to end up seeing Huck do is we're going to end up seeing Huck expand, and you might look back at the Elfie game from part 1 and say, yeah, well, Elfie went all out attacking, and in this game, he's going all out expanding and defending. That's what Sean's talking about. In fact, what I want to emphasize instead is that in the Elfie game, Elfie was having really, really active gateways, and the Robo hardly did anything. 1 Immortal, 1 Colossus. In this game, we're going to see non-stop Robo production and very inactive warp gates. This is another theme I want you to do. So now, all of a sudden, Tyler starts to move up. And what will Huck do now? What is his decision? It looks like Huck is playing very defensively. This is something you'll have to do in your games because we don't really know what Tyler's going to be doing. We see the Warp Prism coming in from Huck. This, to me, would be another aggressive move. This would be Huck saying, okay, I'm going to push the front with this and drop... excuse me. And I'm going to drop the back with the Warp Prism, just as we saw Elfie do. But what does Huck end up seeing? He waltzes right up the ramp. Well, I think he actually ends up seeing it at the front first. When does it happen? Ends up seeing the Stalkers. and realizes that Tyler is not going for an expand. There's a whole bunch of stalkers. He's either going for a delayed 4-gate or for Blink Stalker. Seems pretty damn straightforward. So this is something that I would want you to be aware of if you are in Huck's position. So popping back to the Huck cam, watch the way that Huck deals with this. In production, that I'm actually finally going to open up. In the production tab, we see, look at this, no gateway units are going to be popping up for a long time. Sure, gateway units to harass, but none up here at the front. Just chrono boost non-stop on the Immortal. Look up here at production. Look up there. We see one Immortal is going to finish. Another Immortal ends up coming out. Right now we have 3 Immortals in the main, 1 Stalker, 2 Sentries, and a Zealot. We have like as many gateway units as we do Robo units. And yeah, obviously being able to pull off this sort of junk is good. And maybe you could go for a kill play if you're in Huck's position here. But the important thing that I want you to do if you are in this spot is to just expand. To just calmly pull back and expand once you feel like you have enough Immortals to be able to defend yourself. At this point, there's going to be a little bit of reading going on by Huck, but the very, very common thing that players will do is, again, active Robo, idle Warp Gates. Active Robo and idle Warp Gates. Well, what would Huck do next? Well, with his leftover money, he's just going to build more gateways, and he's going to add on more Twilight Council. So I've gone into some detail. Let's just state it broadly. You have an opening that you don't die with. Then you get 3-gate Robo. You start going a little bit Immortal heavy because you see him building Stalkers. Nothing complicated here. And then you expand, and while expanding, you're only building out of your Robo and adding on more gateways. I mean, if you see your opponent coming to attack, just freaking build more gateway units. No big deal. But the important thing is the extreme that Huck is going to take this to. Look at this. Has 4 Immortals, a 5th, a 6th one in production. This is generally considered nuts. And look, 2 more gateways get thrown down. A Twilight Council continuing to tech. He's going for Blink to combat his opponent's Blink. We still know our opponent is not expanding. We can kill off all these rocks. Look at that. Immortal number 7 coming out. 6 Immortals. 2 Sentries, 1 Zealot. Very cool play. Cool looking, too. I mean, is that not kick-ass? This isn't a serious tournament match. And look at this. Nothing in the production. Nothing at all. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Are we even seeing an army move up? Well, no, not really. I would say Huck's only blunder is not having a pylon right here to warp in right away to reinforce. But we now have 5 warp gates up. We're starting to get Blink ourselves. And then finally, Huck starts adding in a couple of gateway units. And he is going to just surge ahead in that gateway unit count. If we actually just come to the army tab, I mean, it looks like Tyler has a larger army supply, but come and look at the units. 11 Zealots, 6 Sentries, Blink Stalkers. We have 7 Immortals. The Immortals are basically going to mean these Stalkers don't even exist. We're in very good shape from Huck's position. I think Huck probably could have repositioned himself slightly better throughout this game. But then, uh-oh, here comes the push. You can spend all your chrono boosts on these gateways if you need. And notice how different a feel last game had from this one. We opened up with the same sort of platform, but we basically identified, hell, if you're going for a whole bunch of Blink Stalkers, I'm going to go absolutely apeshit building Immortals while expanding. And with my extra money, I am only going to build gateways. I'm not going to build gateway units, I'm going to build gateways. Incorporating these sorts of extra tactics will obviously help, but the important thing is the core funny business that's happening back at home. Cleans up. Because I love you, I want you to see how kick-ass the final battle is. Ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, morphing in more stalkers, trying to run up the high ground. He gets chased with Blink. Good. Excellent. Now, what we're actually going to do is watch another 3-gate Robo game, and then we're going to re-watch it from the other player's point of view. Where is it? It's going to be... Ha! Huck versus Elfie. So again, this is also, I believe, from the Asus ROG Stars. That's not the right screen. There we go. We have Huck here, and then we have Elfie up in the top left corner. So now what we're going to see is a third completely different way that you can follow it up. We've seen it followed up, 3-Gate Robo followed up with the Colossus Warp Prism play in the first game we watched. We saw the Mass Immortal expand in the second game we watched, and now in this third one, you know, for 6 APM you type GLHF really fast. Do you have a copy pasted? Aw, Huck, you so funny. In this game we're going to see a third variation. It's going to be Blink Stalkers with Observers. Now I really do like Elfie's opening a little bit better than Huck's. Remember in game number 1, what did Elfie do? In the first game we saw Elfie chrono boosted out a Zealot and 3 Stalkers very quickly. Let's just go ahead and observe that he does that. Zealot number 1 coming on up. Chrono boost about to happen. Chrono boosting on the warp gate. Here comes Stalker number 1. Come on. Stalker number 1 getting chrono boosted. Stalker number 2 popping on out. Second chrono boost. Boom. So alright, that's the basic thing that I want you to note. Huck, on the other hand, just went 1 Stalker, 1 Zealot. And Huck is also now going for his Robo facility as well. Here's the reason I'm really leery of this kind of play from Huck. Watch what Elfie does. We're actually going to ignore Elfie's base for a moment, because I want this very simple idea just smashed into your skull. We are not at 6 minutes yet. 6 minutes is about as early as you can get warp gates in this matchup. That's just a useful number to kind of know. But look at this. Elfie just gets to waltz right up the ramp. Remember that sentry we talked about in game number 2? Yeah, that sentry popped out enough to hold off the 4-gate, but not enough to hold off just a couple of gateway units that pop up early. This is why I like Elfie's opening better. Again, right at the start of the daily, we said, what are the 3 parts we're going to talk about? How to stay alive and get to the 3-gate Robo. And then we're going to talk about the transitions afterwards. So there's sort of the before, what you do right when you have the 3-gate Robos up, and then what you do afterwards. And the before, what are the 2 things I said were good? Either going crazy aggression like Elfie, or doing something like what White Raw does, where he just rushes for a sentry. It's that sort of thing that makes me like Elfie's opening a little better than Huck's. We see Huck's has a clear vulnerability to that. But now let's just come back to Elfie's base. What are some of the things we noted that we wanted when we would go 3-gate Robo? Well, we kind of want an early second gas geyser so we can do all our fun creative things. And continuing to add on the pylons. There's the assimilator. And again, Elfie will get himself up a robotics facility. He's not going to really rush for it. He's just going to kind of get it as he has money. First and foremost, he's going to get this probe, this Stalker, that Stalker, and this Zealot to push, because that's what's going to let him stay alive. And look at him going right on back to chrono boosting probes. In the production tab, we see, yeah, Huck continuing to build those probes as well. Now, in a lot of circumstances, your opponent will be crippled in some way, such as he 4-gates and it doesn't work, or you just break into his base and start doing some damage. Look at this pylon here. That's going to be able to do a whole world of hurt. And look, Huck's going to lose this 1 sentry. Elfie actually cancels this pylon. His goal is not to kill his opponent by any means. He is continuing to build these pylons in here, but he's willing to cancel them off. Elfie is doing some severe messing with the opponent. I mean, losing 2 workers this early is just devastating. 5 workers, huge amount. So right now, Elfie is basically totally screwed. In a lot of circumstances, you would have to build another gateway to be able to defend, but we're going to see Elfie go straight for the Observer. Do you see any Immortal? No, of course not. No Immortal anywhere. He's going to be getting himself his own Twilight Council up. And now Elfie is going to be in Happy Town, USA. Very simple variation to follow this up with. The important thing is that there was some kind of crippling moment that happened for the opponent. The important thing is that a 4-gate failed, or we broke in and did a lot of damage. The important thing is that our opponent is in defense mode hardcore. If we actually come over to the map, we see that in the unit station, Huck had to build this one Immortal. Huck has no observers left. Huck is in crazy defense mode. He has to stay alive. This move by Huck, even though it looks like a big attack, is a defensive move. Huck's trying to just push Elfie back and hope that Elfie will be unable to continue this aggression. So this is a pretty darn simple play. I'm actually going to remove all the production tab and just talk about some of the basic looks. Elfie's still continuing to add on a lot of probes. More than willing to morph in one sentry should there be a huge army that rolls on in, but he wants to be careful not to morph that sentry in unless he really needs to. The observer helps us see, aha, yeah, there we go. There is the expand up. And kind of similar to the first game that we saw Elfie do. If your opponent expands, feel free to go crazy nuts with the aggression. The important thing about this follow-up, it's not just Blink that you're getting. It's Blink plus Observer, which is about 1,000 times stronger than regular old Blink. If your observers start dying, frickin' rebuild them. For some reason, some people just build one observer and that's all they build all game long. Don't do that. Build a lot of observers because now Elfie can advance forward and do these nice tactics where he walks in the front, and then if you're vulnerable up in the main, he blinks up there. Now that he's forced his opponent to cancel, this would absolutely be a reasonable time to expand. And when he expands, he could begin going for Zealot Sentry. Very common. Very common. Because Elfie is a boss, he's just going to go ahead and waltz on in. Huck, with his usual pylon placement, is able to sort of cause some problems. But Elfie's just going to go ahead and blink in, go for it, and end up with the win. Blink Stalkers are a great way to punish your opponent if he has been crippled. Even if Huck was not really crippled, Elfie can still mess with this base and with this base. This is generally something that you want to do if your opponent is in defense mode. That buys you a lot of time to get the Blink Stalkers up, and then you can sort of permanently set him in defense mode and gain control of the entire game. Now, what I want to do is pop back over to Huck's point of view, and we're just going to rewatch a couple segments of this again, so we can kind of see some other strategies to do. Let's just pretend this is a different game for the time being. We can talk about this game with the same idea that we've been looking at in these other 3-gate Robo games. Well, we want to make sure that we can stay alive before our 3-gate Robo comes up. The big issue that we see with getting one Zealot and then one Stalker is obviously that a one Zealot, 2 Stalker attack can just outright walk into our base and kill us. See how delayed that sentry is? I might want to readjust that a bit. But we cannot really, we can not worry about that too much. At this point, let's just let's just get past this. We're gonna like half pretend that this didn't happen and that sort of shenaniganry. So there's multiple ways to go for the very fast Colossus. In game 1, we saw the Colossus used as an aggressive tool. We're gonna see Huck use it as a defensive tool. What Huck is gonna be doing is he's gonna be expanding and going for the Colossus. So what he does is he gets the Immortal out as fast as he can and does a little push with it. You see all these units moving out. This is lovely. Huck's very happy. Not really building too much out of these gateways, just building probes and observers. But he pushes with that first Immortal. He pushes with this first set of Stalkers. And then what he's going to be doing is expanding and once again making almost no gateway units and keeping a very active Robo. This is a very solid way to play. Here's the Nexus coming up. We have the Observer trying to just repel everything. You can see how fast Elfie is getting all this stuff up. And there's the Robo Bay coming down. It is not uncommon in this matchup to do an expand and then follow it up with something like expand and then Robo. Or maybe expand and then blink. And it's completely common to do that, thinking all the while, hell, if he does do this huge attack, I just cancel, and continue playing. It is absolutely correct to be prepared to cancel. But notice Huck keeping very few units building out of the warp gates. In fact, yeah, 4 Stalkers, 2 Sentries, 1 Zealot. The 2 Sentries are the only gateway units that have really been built since this Robo is finished. Active Robo, idle gateways. And then with all that money he saved up, he sees the attack coming. Oh no! That's when he responds and builds these 3 Zealots. But if that attack doesn't come, what Huck's going to be focusing on is getting up Colossi, and most importantly, getting this range up, and then playing passively. This is a very defensive Colossus play. This is very much so the I'm going to get a bunch of Colossus and win later. But as we see, Huck's unable to really hold off the aggression that's hurtled at him, so he dies. But the big reason that Huck lost that game is because all those units stepped into his base right at the start of the game and killed off 5 of his workers. That's a quarter of his economy right at the start of the game. That's a huge deal. So it makes complete sense that Huck lost that game. But now I want you to feel equipped with 4 different variations that we've seen. We have seen the all-out aggression with Colossus and Warp Prism after 3-Gate Robo. We have seen Mass Immortal expand when we see our opponent having Stalker-heavy armies. We have seen following it up with 3-Gate Blink with Observers, just for harassment, containing, and especially to punish him after his aggression has failed. And then in this 4th run-through, we've seen Huck go for the 3-Gate Robo, then take a fast expansion and go for the Colossus with range. It's a really passive play that Huck's doing, but that's in one of those circumstances where you're like, well, he's really not going to be able to mess with me too much now, and I'm going to be very passive on 2 bases. So when we go into part number 3, we will be checking out a final game where we can see even more options that we'll end up having, and there's going to be a lot of judgment calls we want to talk about in-game. So we're going to come back in about 3 minutes. See you then for part 3.